Tom Clark's 6M podcast is a Boink Studios production. And now, on with the show. Hey, what is up? Welcome to Tom Clark's 6M podcast. I'm your host, Tom Clark, and in this episode, I'm joined by co-host Phil Lindsey.
We are at that point in time now with the 6M podcast in which oftentimes we will have to, or not have to, but we'll go decide what topic we're going to cover, what subject, what movie, what album, what miniseries, what book, the title of the show. What am I telling you for? We'll try to figure out what we're going to do. And we're at the point now where sometimes I have to go search the archives to see if we've already covered it. This happened recently with Office Space. I could have sworn that Phil and I had done Office Space, folks. I mean, I'm telling you, I thought it came to me, Office Space. And I'm like, oh, you moron, we've already done it. Then I went to look and it wasn't there. And I'm like, holy crap, be sure it's not there. I don't want to do it. I want to do it twice for the sake of looking like an idiot, right? Went to find it, wasn't there. We hadn't done it. Well, guess what? That happened again today when, as of maybe 15 minutes ago, Phil very politely says, I thought we'd done Let It Be. And I'm like, no, I've already checked because trust me, I kind of thought the same thing. Because again, 179 episodes in. Yeah, 179 with this one, kids. Holy Lord. Isn't that something? Again, I have to go check. Good news, we've not done it. If you're a Beatles fan, and plus if you followed the show that we have covered Revolver, we've covered Abbey Road, we've covered the White Album, Rubber Soul, Sgt. Pepper. We've also done George's solo album, and we've also done Paul is Dead. That's a fun one. All of these are in the archives, kids. Please go check them out. It's much appreciated. But today we're doing the Beatles' final released album, which is Let It Be. Not their final studio album, but their final released album. All right. It's advertised as final studio album, but we'll get to it. Okay. We'll get to it. In fact, let's do it now. Let It Be is the 12th and final studio album, we can debate that, by the English rock band The Beatles. It was released on May 8th, 1970, almost a month after the group's public breakup in tandem with the documentary of the same name. We'll get to that too. Concerned about recent friction within the band, Paul McCartney conceived the project as an attempt to reinvigorate the group by returning to simpler rock and roll configurations. Its rehearsals started at Twickenham Film Studios on January 2nd, 1969, as part of a planned television documentary showing the Beatles' return to live performance. And there you have it, kids. There in a nutshell is the lowdown for Let It Be. So, Phil, we are discussing the album here today, not the movie, kids. Let's make that clear. We're talking about the album here, so no one's under any illusions otherwise. This is not the Get Back episode, ladies and gentlemen. That one's coming all in good time. But, Phil, as I said, this is the Let It Be album. In terms of favorite Beatle albums, for you personally, where do you rank Let It Be? How high is it on the chain for you?
I would say it's pretty high. I don't have like an official ranking, but I would say it's up there for in terms of the ones that I revisit the most. It's got a lot of really good songs on there. It has the great Billy Preston on it.
Mm.
It has some of their more memorable records for me on there.
It's really good. It's awesome. I love this album. This album had a Spector, pun intended. Hey.
Oh, boy.
Right? A Spector hanging over it for years because of that guy and because of a lot of other things. Plus, it's the final album, technically, released final album, I guess. Yeah, 1970. But for me, Phil, like, this album doesn't sound, apart from the Spector stuff, which we'll get to, I just never walked away from this feeling like, oh, it's the end. Oh no. Oh my God. I don't get that from these tunes, man. I really like this album, man. I mean, like, in terms of the Phil Spector stuff, how far down the rabbit hole have you gone with what his fingers and his hands did to the production of this album.
Of course, I know the infamous stuff with Phil Spector. If you have not seen his biopic, it's very good. Um, Starring Al Pacino, he's fantastic in it.
Mm.
But like I know what he's known for. I know his production style when you hear it, um, and I won't say that it hurts this album. But when you go back and you find out stuff like what Paul thought of it and how he like butted heads with other guys, it's just like, yeah, why'd you guys bring this guy in at all then? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very odd. Like they bring in Michael Lindsey Hogue to direct the Let It Be film. That kind of starts falling apart because the four of them are to the point now, Phil, where they're not functioning too well.
Yes,
And Twickenham Studios, like where they're recording, and it's cold. They're not happy. They're recording in a big warehouse. They had to move locations. It's like, oh man, live. Had you seen the original Let It Be film, by the way, before Get Back happened?
I did.
Now
I
that's
did.
a cold, dark, and somber flick, dude.
Yeah, it definitely paints this picture of the breakup that is different than the version that's on Disney Plus.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. They thank goodness for Peter Jackson. I've got friends who would have my back on that one because without him, we never get back.
Hmm.
So, how much good do you think that's done for this album in terms of how people look at it today? You think it's changed people's perception of it now, or no?
I'm not sure. It didn't change minds very much because I have already sat with the album for a long time before I watched it, and of course I watched the original as well.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know. I guess like when you look at some of the stuff like there's a particular song on here when you see them perform it on there, it makes you appreciate the song a bit more.
Mhm.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to say because I mean, music is so subjective, right? Because everyone's got their own tastes, and music hits everyone in a different way. So some people may actually hate this album, other people praise it. I mean, it's hard to say for sure.
Hmm.
But again, for me, this is not a downer. The film is a downer. Get Back, however, is not. It's freaking fantastic, and but I do enjoy this album. How do you feel about this album in terms of it was the final piece of Beatles, content at that time that we got? Do you, because it kind of, we've done Abbey Road here, Phil, and Abbey Road just feels like more of a fitting end. And as we
Yes.
said, dude, as we said before, we've got to point this out is that Let It Be fell apart and they left, but then they came back. And I don't know if Paul called John or John called Paul and they said, look, let's do this one more time. Let's do it for real. We don't want to end that way. We don't want to go out like that. Like they kind of knew Abbey Road was the last album without telling anybody. They kind of knew it already. Abbey Road doesn't have that feel. Abbey Road ends nice and it's a great freaking album. Like if Let It Be had come before Abbey Road in terms of release, how would that have been, you think?
I think Abbey Road, like you're saying, creatively feels like the end. Like
Mm,
when we talked about the album, like narratively, like the last few songs on the album, it feels like the end. It feels like a
mm,
nice bow to put on the end of their discography. When you listen to this album, it doesn't feel like that at all. It feels like, hey, these guys still have more they can do.
mm. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point. Yeah, in terms of chronology, like if you're a Marvel guy, you know what we're talking about. The timeline. Uh, this feels like it should have come out, and I mean, that was the plan. This was going to come out before, and Phil, with the album being titled "Let It Be" and it's the last official studio album released. Let it be. In other words, that's it. We're done. Just let it be. Let it go. We're done. Like I can see how that left a somber taste or a somber note in the minds of fans for a long time. Makes sense. But like we said, Abbey Road's a fantastic album. So in terms of this album and where it fits, I mean, we talked about that. And again, for me personally, if kids, if you're a Beatles fan, then you're a fan of this album. I'm sorry. I mean, it's you can skip whatever you want to skip. And Phil, let me kick it off here with that. Do you skip anything on this album?
Um, there's maybe like one. There's only one song really that I skip.
Hmm.
It's really
Well,
like short and it's not really a song. So
you're talking about Dig It. You're talking about Dig It.
I'm talking about Maggie May. It's not really a song. It's
Oh,
like
that's
what,
fair.
40 seconds?
It's 40 seconds. Yeah. Dig It's actually 50. So, yeah, it's not really a tune. It's more them messing around or messing about, as they would say. Yeah. Let's get into a little bit of things here before we go too hardcore. There are deluxe editions released, kids. Um, you can go find them. We are covering the original release, 12 tracks here today. Phil, have you checked out Let It Be Naked?
I have not.
Oh, go check out Let It Be Naked. It's the stripped down version, the way God and nature and the Beatles intended. There's no orchestra. It's wonderful. Dude, you'll be a fan instantly. It sounds like the way this album was supposed to have sounded. So, yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of it, dude.
Yeah. Now, of course, I've heard like outtakes of a bunch of songs on here because the
Mhm.
outtakes are everywhere. And it's kind of the same when I heard outtakes from the first George Harrison album. You can see why when he walked in the studio and heard Wah Wah with like the wall of sound on it, he's just like, I hate it. Like,
Yeah, yeah. Oh God, yeah, same.
and I don't hate Wah Wah, but when you hear like the original version with like his intention, it's just him and a guitar. It sounds like a different song.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It's amazing, Phil, how things, and we saw this in Get Back. We saw Get Back being written organically. Dude, it's a fascinating moment in that movie to see how these guys work together and bounced off of each other. But like, earlier versions compared to what we get on the album, sometimes it's night and day, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
So we have to note here as well, Let It Be topped album charts in both the US and the UK, and the Let It Be single, The Longer Winding Road, also reached number one in the US. Despite its commercial success, reviews were not good at the time. Imagine that, Phil, the public being hard on the Beatles, or at least the critics. It's kind of what they were saddled with for a very long time. Um, the bigger you are, the more crap you take, apparently. Kind of how that goes. In terms of certifications, in the United States, it's certified platinum. I'm sorry, 4 times platinum. Let's try that one on. 4 million units sold. So this album has done some damage. 2 times platinum in New Zealand, 4 times in Canada, platinum in other parts of the world, United Kingdom platinum. So there you go. Really good stuff. So let's get to this album here, kids. I'm ready. Phil's ready. Let's tackle this. The first track off this album is Two of Us. And again, if you are a fan of this album, then you know all these tracks by heart, I would dare say. You're familiar with them, and you're either with them or you're not. And, again, subjectivity being in play, whatever you want to listen to it. But for me, I love this album. Two of Us at 3 minutes, 30 seconds. Of course, McCartney and Lennon on lead vocals. And again, it's the first track kicking us off here. Phil, what's your take and what's your opinion on Two of Us?
I really like Two of Us. I think it's a great way to start the album. Um, it's it's one of the few times on this album where you could see that Paul and John had a very shared creative output on it. It very feels like collaborative. There are other songs on here where you can tell that Paul wrote his part and then John came with his part and it was just like, all right, let's just put them together and make a song. And it's just like some of it is like, all right, where you can tell where each of these people are at that time in their lives and in their career. But this one, you don't get that feeling at all. It feels like this is very cohesive. It's very like even the harmonies on it. It just feels like they're both in this song making it together.
Mm, I love it. Dude, the both of them harmonizing together. It sounds like they're singing on the same mic. It just sounds like a small room to me. It doesn't sound like a
Yes.
big song. I just think it makes it better, dude. Recapture some of the magic for sure.
Yeah.
By the way, we also have to say that Two of Us was the title of the ill-fated, I think it was a VH1 original movie released in 2000 called Two of Us, which was a fictionalized version of a 1976 reunion between McCartney and Lennon. Did you ever see that film?
I've never seen it.
Oh, don't. You don't need to. You don't need to. I'll save you the time. I mean, look, here's the funny bit. I'm 99% sure it was made for, it was a VH1. Yes, it was VH1 production. Here's the funny part. They couldn't get the rights to any of the music. So,
Yeah. Wow. So what did they play in this thing?
I don't know. I don't remember, but it wasn't good. Like the no songs by the Beatles included.
Yeah. But yeah, I really love Two of Us. Very, very folk.
Yeah.
Very like kind of campfire-y sing along.
Good call. I'm with that. Unfortunately, this song is also tied to the row that happens between Paul and George. Phil, if there's one moment from that Let It Be movie that stayed with people for, 30, 40 years, was that argument between Paul and George when George had enough.
Yeah, Paul being Paul. You got the exchange of, I'll play the song however you want. Just tell me how you want to play it.
Whatever it is that will please you, I'll do it. Because you can hear him on the recording or on the movie. Paul's trying to whisper because he knows he's being filmed. He's like, you know what? I'm just trying to help you. And I'm thinking, you're just trying to help him. Don't talk to this guy like you just met him, like he's a new guitarist, like he's a child. That always stayed with me, Phil, as being a very condescending way to speak to George.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's kind of the theme of the movie, and there's a theme in this album where, George was becoming his own guy. He was peaking creatively, and being a Beatle meant that those two guys were the ones that wrote all the songs. They were the ones that kind of came up with a lot of the creative process, and he was starting to feel like an odd man out.
Yeah. We've praised this band multiple times here on the show as individual musicians and as a collective, but Paul's a genius. I'm sorry. I mean, people can have their own opinions, Phil, but Paul's a creative genius. But the curse of being that guy is that not everything you're going to release is going to work because you know what I mean? Because it's in your head and it sounds good, but you release it and it's not good, as we saw during his solo career. And then plus, so maybe sometimes you don't know how to talk to people. I think that's where Paul was, man.
Well, I just think that they were all at this point where they were all in different points in their lives. They were kind of getting on each other's nerves. And they had done the Beatles for their entire adolescence, and these guys were now adults, and it's kind of like, all right, well, I have ideas that I want to do creatively. And it didn't mean that anybody was necessarily wrong. It's just, all right, well, I've just kind of outgrown this thing. I want to make my own music. And you can see that Paul was kind of there. You can see John was kind of there. George was definitely there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure, dude. No doubt about it. So Linda McCartney, which was Paul's first wife, kids, as we all know, had said at the time, quote, as a kid, I loved getting lost. I would say to my father, let's get lost. But you could never seem to be able to get really lost. All signs would eventually lead back to New York or wherever we were staying. Then when I moved to England to be with Paul, we would put Martha in the back of the car, Martha, my dear, and drive out of London. As soon as we were on the open road, I'd say, let's get lost. And we keep driving without looking at any signs. Hence the line in the song, two of us going nowhere. Paul wrote Two of Us as one of those days out. It's about us. We just pulled off in the woods somewhere and parked the car. I went off walking while Paul sat in the car and started writing. He also mentions the postcards because we used to send a lot of postcards to each other. Phil, this is a prime example of how things had changed. The dynamic between John and Paul, where they would be in a room together writing songs, and then later it became they each wrote a song and then presented it to the other guy to do in the studio.
Yes. And that's why I know that when we talk about it earlier and you listen to the song and it's just like, yeah, you can tell that their writing process has changed, but you couldn't feel that listening to this song as much as you could in other songs.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. And we mentioned Spector earlier, kids. We do have to remind everyone here that this album was not produced by the great Sir George Martin. This is produced by Phil Spector, who was not the great Sir. Okay. So let's just put that out there. But yeah, I again, like Phil, like you just said, the creative process had changed. Things were not the same as they were before, but I enjoyed this song nevertheless.
Yeah.
Track number 2 is very much a John song. 100%. This is Dig a Pony at 3 minutes, 54 seconds. So, Phil, it occurs to me that either you are a fan of this song or you have no idea what in the world he's talking about, and it's just John gibberish. Where do you fall on Dig a Pony?
Yeah, we've definitely heard the interviews where he is just like, this song is just gibberish. It doesn't mean anything. He doesn't
Mhm.
really care about it. Definitely get the idea that this guy was incredibly high when he wrote it. But I love Dig a Pony. It's one of my favorite songs on the album. It's one of those songs, every time I hear it, I sit and listen to the whole thing.
I like Dig a Pony. I don't know if I say I love it, but I enjoy it quite a bit. I'm with you. It's not a skip for me at all. I don't have a skip on this album, brother. I just don't. I really enjoy it. And to your point about what John said before, he is on the record as saying that this song was a piece of garbage.
Mhm.
And he expressed similar scorn for many of his songs. It was written for his soon to be wife, Yoko, and features a multitude of strange, seemingly nonsensical phrases strung together, what Lennon referred to as a Bob Dylan style of lyric.
Yeah. But I just I like the song a lot.
Yeah.
I like the structure of the song. I like how I like his vocals on it a lot. Um, there's just something about it. I really like it.
This song was originally titled All I Want Is You.
Yeah. There's just something about when you hear it start. Do 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 do
Yeah.
do do. It's a great song. Sorry, John. I enjoy it.
Listen here, John. You don't know what you're talking about. You know what? Look, as a sidebar, Phil, the thing that made John so great, and you could spend the next week talking about this, but for me personally, as a fan, what sums it up is he never took any of this stuff too seriously, least of all
Yes.
himself.
Yeah, I mean, you get that idea as soon as the album starts, and he's they're they're talking over the recording. It's a very Johnism. He does that a lot throughout the Beatles catalog.
He does, yeah. Nonsensical phrases. I mean, that's kind of who this guy is. Yeah, but the fact that he didn't like it is freaking crazy. I mean, it just goes back to who the guy was. So Apple, as we said before, issued Let It Be on May 8th, 1970. Dig a Pony sequences the second track between Two of Us and Across the Universe, and it followed a month after McCartney's comments in a questionnaire promoting his self-titled solo album and had resulted in the Beatles' breakup because Paul kind of got everything rolling, Phil, with that first solo album. My goodness. Man,
It's lonely at the
alive.
top. Flash, it's lonely at the top.
I guess. Yeah, for sure. It didn't have to be Phil. He had three other guys with him,
You know what that's a reference to, right?
Sure.
It's the Five Heartbeats reference. When
That's right. Yeah, you're right.
they
Totally.
accept an
Oh, my
award,
Lord.
he's like, "Yep." By the way, put out solo album Flash. It's lonely at the top.
Oh, that's good. God, I haven't seen that in a long time. Yeah. So this song has gotten, back and forth. I think people appreciate it because it's silly. And other people are like, I don't understand what this is supposed to be. What's going on here?
Yeah, it's just a silly love song. It's just that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. And like with a lot of other things, Phil, Beatles fans tend to try to dig too much into the deep meaning when sometimes there's just no deep meaning to be had.
Yeah, I've never figured there was any deep meaning to it. This was always kind of like a romantic gesture of a
Mm,
song.
yeah, for sure. And as with every song that, with the exception of where Ringo's featured or where George wrote, every song here is a Lennon McCartney jam. That never changed. So
Hmm.
we'll throw that out there as well. Speaking of Lennon, his track number 3 is his track as well. And this is Across the Universe. This is 3 minutes, 48 seconds. And man, you talk about nonsensical, silly stuff with Dig a Pony. And then Across the Universe is, holy Lord. Like, this guy's a poet, Phil. Like, I can't gush enough about this song. Like the instrumentation of it, the composition, the sound of his voice, the lyrics, dude. Some people may think of this as pretentious, which I've heard that before. I've heard that criticism before. I don't. I love this song. What do you think about Across the Universe?
It is one of the best Beatles songs of all time. It's one
Mm.
of Lennon's best contributions to the band. And like I was saying earlier, where you can see that John was kind of ready to make his own music. You can see it here. You can see that he was ready to make more avant-garde music. You can
Mm.
see he was ready to make more music that had a message and not just like I don't want to I don't want to say pop. Pop might be the wrong word, but less mainstream rock music than the Beatles were known for.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, I remember when they did yesterday, Paul didn't want to release it because he's like, "This is we're a band. It shouldn't just be me on stage with a guitar. This is not who we are." Like he liked the song and they wanted to release it, but he didn't want to do it. And John was like, "No, this song's great. We got to do this." But yeah, it's like a deviation, Phil, from the formula that they had always done. I mean, Across the Universe, as you said, is a great example of how John had matured as an artist. I mean,
Hmm.
it's interesting, isn't it, that Phil was like more the pop music, MTV kind of guy, and John was like, "Yeah, I don't really care about any of that." Like John wrote his version of love songs were different. Let's say that. I mean, not too far out of left field, but it's just, and honestly, Phil, you can make the argument that's why those two guys worked together so well through the years because they were yin and yang in a lot of respects, weren't they?
Yes. Paul very much liked his syrupy love records. He very much likes his fluff. He likes
Mm,
his you could tell the Paul songs like right away. You could tell the John songs in retrospect. Like John is very. I mean, there's a song coming up where you could see like the dichotomy of them very clearly. And you could tell like in this song a lot. But yeah, that they work because they're complete opposites in some ways.
yeah. Oh man, 100%. We have to mention that the song first appeared on the 1969 Various Artists charity compilation album, No One's Gonna Change Our World. And of course, later here on the 1970 album, Let It Be. The original version featured on two different albums, both titled Rarities, a 1978 British release and a 1980 US release. It was also included on their 1988 album, Past Masters Volume 2. Great album, by the way, kids. If you got the Beatles stuff, you got to have Past Masters 1 and 2. The song has been covered by many artists, including David Bowie on his 75 album Young Americans, which featured contributions from John Lennon. And about this song, Lennon actually patted himself on the back for a change. He said, quote, "One of the best lyrics I've ever written. In fact, it could be the best. It's good poetry or whatever you call it without chewing on it or without chewing it. See, the ones I like are the ones that stand as words without melody. They don't have to have any melody. Like a poem, you can just read them." What a great comment, dude.
Yeah.
Really, really good. So, written during 67, 68, the lyrics are typical of Lennon's songwriting during that time, dreamy, abstract, and highly image based. I got to be honest with you, man. It's a whole other conversation for another pod, but sometimes I wonder what had he if he had not been killed. Could you have envisioned John being like a producer at one point? Because he was an artist. I mean, honestly, I could have envisioned him. I don't know about being a director, but maybe a producer, maybe working on a film to some degree in later years. Like, God, dude, the sky was the limit for that guy, wasn't it?
Yeah, I definitely think he would have been a producer slash songwriter for somebody. I think that he would have worked with a bunch of artists moving forward if I had to guess.
Mm, yeah, good call. Song was recorded on February 4th, 1968. At the 40th anniversary of that day, NASA beamed across the universe into space in the direction of the North Star Polaris. That's nice. Really, really nice touch. Yeah, the flavor of the song was heavily influenced by Lennon's and the Beatles' interest in transcendental meditation. In late 67, 68, the song was composed. Based on this, he added the mantra Ja Guru Deva Orn to the piece, which became the link to the chorus. The Sanskrit phrase is a sentence fragment whose words could have many meanings. Literally approximates to victory to God divine, hail to the divine guru, or the phrase commonly invoked by the late Maharishi Mahesh Yogi in referring to his spiritual teacher, all glory to Guru Dev. So there you are, transcendental meditation. Did you do some transcendental meditation this morning, Phil, before you went about your day?
I did not.
Are you a meditation guy? Have you ever tried that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I enjoy meditation a lot, but I can't say that I got as deeply into it as John and the Beatles did in India.
There you go. You're not on the astral plane hanging out with T'Chaka, nothing like that crazy happening.
No.
It's beautiful. I'm telling you, you're missing out. The big tree and everything. It's funny after that Black Panther movie. I mean, I'm sitting back going, man, what would my astral plane look like? Let's talk about that. So everyone's is going to be different, I suppose. Hey, kids, Tom Clark here, and did you know the very podcast you're listening to right now is available on boinkstudios.com. B-O-I-N-K, Boink Studios is the home of Tom Clark's Main Event, Tom Clark's 6M podcast, and Two Nations Under Ted, a Ted Lasso podcast. Visit the site today for links to every podcast platform, social media, special announcements, and a lot more. Check out the site and bookmark today, boinkstudios.com. Yeah, again, can't gush over this song enough. It's freaking phenomenal, kids. Freaking phenomenal. Love this song. Let's go to track number 4. Mr. Harrison is here. Not bad. 4 songs into the side 1 here. I Mean Mine, clocking in at 2 minutes, 26 seconds. I know you're a George guy, Phil. What do you think about this tune in terms of his other Beatles content? What's your verdict on it?
I remember when I first listened to this album, and I listened to this song, and I'm like, I'm surprised they let this song make the album. Not just because like his relationship with them at the time, but you could very clearly hear his frustrations on the song of how he's just like he had just kind of had it with like all the arguing. He kind of had it with just like kind of all of the egos in this thing. And that's very much the theme of this record. I mean, he even used this song as the name of his autobiography, if I remember correctly. And so this is like kind of a big record for him for his career. I feel like it's kind of his statement towards the end of the Beatles of him kind of being fed up and ready to not so much just branch out on his own, but just kind of tired of like the infighting.
Oh, you said it, and so did George when he said, quote, I mean, mine is the ego problem. There are 2 I's. The little I when people say I am this, and the big I is duality and ego. There is nothing that isn't part of the complete whole. When the little I merges into the big I, then you are really smiling. He can say what he wants about that, trying to be all deep and whatnot, but I know the lyrics I'm reading, Phil, and it sounds an awful lot like, yeah, it's all about you guys. This is all
So,
that matters.
for all very you could tell the frustrations, and I think it's
Yeah.
also very telling that in Get Back he played this song, and John was not the nicest about this record.
That's right.
It's not the nicest about this record. If I remember the direct quote, he told him, "This is a rock band. We play rock music. We don't play this waltz stuff."
Yeah.
And there's also the stuff from the original Get Back and from the video that was released at one point for I Mean Mine with him dancing with Yoko and doing the waltz mockingly while
Yes.
George is trying to play the record.
Ooh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, we praise John on one hand, then on the other hand, we say, the curse of creative genius, Phil, is that sometimes you don't. Oh, how do we put this? Like, you're living in your own genius, I suppose, and you don't understand. It's kind of like another version of Sheldon Cooper from Big Bang Theory. Like you're so incredibly smart, you don't understand sometimes how you could hurt someone because you don't get how they're not with you in the same conversation, I guess. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I get it that he and Paul were used to writing all the songs. They had a vision for what they wanted the album to sound like, and it's not that George didn't have his contributions, but I think George also was one of the youngest members of the band as well, and so I can see him feeling like it's hard to feel like I'm heard amongst them sometimes.
Yeah. And you mentioned the waltz; it's infamous. I mean, that's been shown a lot through the years, of course. But at that point, John had left the group. That happened. George left at one point. John left at one point, and the 3 remaining members of the band actually recorded this song at EMI Studios, and John apparently was not involved. So yeah, you know what? That's fine. Like they didn't really need him. Like this song is. I mean, I'm a big fan of this song, dude. I mean, It sucks on one hand, Phil, because like you said, you can audibly hear frustration. You can hear, and even the music kind of echoes. It's not like the music isn't grating on my ears, but even the music sounds like it's just, I don't know. I don't
It's a,
know. It's hard to
it's a,
explain.
it's a stark contrast from
Yeah.
everything that comes before it. Like the first three songs don't sound anything like I Me Mine. And you can, that's why I'm saying you can tell that all of these guys were in different places creatively. And you could tell that George had things he wanted to say in his music. He had a sound that he wanted to go with it with his music, and it didn't quite hit with what they wanted to do. And that's not to say it doesn't fit on this album; it does. And I really like "I Me Mine," but you can very much tell listening to this album where these three guys were.
Yeah, for sure. And mentioning Spector, Spector extended the track by repeating the chorus and second verse, in addition to adding an orchestration and a female choir, because that's just what Spector wanted to do, Phil. He wanted to add strings, and
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know. That's why I recommend Let It Be Naked, because it's. I would argue that it's this is how the band intended it. Let me just listen to this. I've listened to Let It Be Naked more in the past few years than I have the
yeah,
original album, if I'm being honest. So
yeah. But yeah, big fan of this record. I think it's a good kind of precursor to a lot of stuff that George does on his first solo album. Um, yeah, I really like the song.
yeah, same.
Sorry again, John.
Really not, you're not making John very happy today. I'm telling you. It's two different shots at the guy. Let him rest in peace. So number 5, 50 seconds is Dig It. Love this. Don't know why I love it so much, but it's just hoo-ha nonsense, as I like to call it. But it's John, and it's great. And it fits. You know why it fits? Because it's John and it's great, in my
Mhm.
opinion. Like a Rolling Stone, like the FBI, like the CIA, and the BBC, BB King and Doris Day, Matt Busby, Dig It. And that's it. There's the song. So, and that was Can You Dig It by Georgie Wood. And now we'd like to do Hark the Angels Come. And man, Phil, can you hear that in your head in that
Yes,
sing-songy voice?
yes, and they're like the kind of the silly voice that John and Paul do. It's very funny.
Yes. Oh, it's so good. What's funny is that let's see, this song and Maggie May appear on the Let It Be album, but are excluded from Let It Be Naked, instead being replaced with Don't Let Me Down. So yeah, interesting. But several versions of this were recorded during the Get It Back / Let It Be sessions. The 51-second version on the album is an extract taken from the January 26th version, which was a 15-minute jam that evolved from a Loose Like a Rolling Stone jam. And man, there's more notes on this song than I ever would have thought possible. Holy Lord.
Hmm.
I did not see that coming. In the early part of the jam, Lennon sings the main lyric with interjections from Harrison, and then it just keeps evolving from there. It's crazy. The second sentence of that line is cut off and Let It Be's film in terms of Hark the Angels Come. Uh, I mean, really, Phil, this song kind of just is there to introduce, Let It Be, isn't it? That's kind of, in my head, it's really the only purpose it has.
Yeah, it's essentially an interlude. I mean, it's a good interlude. I enjoy it. It's basically like a bluesy like jam session,
Mm-hmm.
but it's
Yeah.
essentially an interlude. It's not really a song. It doesn't really have a structure. It's just like it's just it's gibberish over a jam session.
Yeah. And I believe it's the first time we see Mr. Preston on this album. I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, the first time that we heard him on Dig a Pony, and
Um,
yeah, so but Dig a Pony was his first entrance onto this album, and then he is on Dig It as well. So that leads us to track number 6, Phil. 4 minutes and 3 seconds. I don't know what you and I in 2024 can add to this. I don't even know why I would try. but this song is an absolute. If anyone needs any kind of proof that Paul McCartney is an absolute amazing songwriter and visionary and genius, I'm sorry, but like brilliant. I mean, just look no further than Let It Be, Phil. What can we say here that would do justice to this? Is there anything we can offer? Honestly, what do you think?
I mean, yeah, it's one of their signature records. Probably easily one of the best songs on this album, one of the best songs in their entire discography. Um, like you said, it's one of Paul's best contributions to the band as a songwriter.
Mm.
But it's just one of those songs on this album where everything is working. His lyrics are great. His vocals are fantastic on here. Um, Billy Preston on organ is great.
Mm,
Him on organ right before George comes in with his guitar solo. Perfect.
so
Um,
good.
just great song all around.
The anthology version, Phil, might be my favorite of this song because on the anthology, you get John saying, "Are we supposed to giggle in the solo?" And Paul goes, "Yeah." And John goes, "Okay." And he goes, this will knock you out, boy." And then he starts playing Let It Be. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, the only reason I want to time travel, Phil, is not to go, stop the Kennedy assassination and screw the world up or do something like the Flash did and mess us all up and we're all dead. I just want to go hang out, be a fly on the wall in the studio and the Beatles are recording their albums. Like, I can't even imagine. Oh my God. I just came out of this guy. Holy Lord. What's fun is that at the end of that version on the anthology, you can hear John say, "I think that was rather grand. I'll take it. I'll take one home with me." And then he says, "Okay, let's track it." And then very surprisingly says, "You bounder, you cheat." And that's a reference to the no overdub policy the Beatles had adopted for the Get Back project. So, yeah, just the way it all ties together on the anthology version, kids, is really, really awesome. I feel I love this song. I don't know how it hits you. If I listen to it on a certain day, if I'm in a certain frame of mind or feeling a certain kind of way emotionally, it gets me emotional. I just can't help it. Like, if you've lost someone, man, hear this song on the right day, brother, and you're a basket case. I mean, it's hit me like that. I mean, oh my goodness. And the idea of and the see if you've heard this. The version I've always heard about this song, the story behind it, was that Mother Mary refers to to Paul's mom, and that during the rigors of touring, when things were getting tough, that Paul would be alone in his room. The only quiet time he ever had was in bed at night when he was trying to get some sleep, and that he would think about his mom, or that she would come to him in a dream or something. Have you heard that through the years in reference to this song?
Yes. It's also, oh man, it's also what made certain lines that John said in this record to Paul bite even harder. Um,
Mm,
where he very much calls him a mother's boy, and it's just like, ouch.
yeah. Yeah, big time. And the dream we're talking about, kids, is during the sessions for the White Album. And apparently, I didn't know this bit that Paul's mom had died of cancer in 56 when he was 14. I knew he lost her young, but I didn't realize how she passed. So, yeah, that's unfortunate. But so in January of 69, in place of the Mother Mary lyric, Paul would occasionally sing Brother Malcolm, a reference to the Beatles' assistant Mal Evans. And that's just a little tidbit there. And Paul later said it was great to visit with her again in terms of the dream. I felt very blessed to have that dream. So that got me writing Let It Be. Uh, and in a later interview, he said in the dream, his mother told him, "It'll be all right. Just let it be." And God, freaking crazy, man. Freaking crazy. Some Catholics said, take Mother Mary to be the Virgin Mary. And Paul has responded to that with listeners can interpret the song however they like, which is kind of what has always been the case for the Beatles, isn't it?
Yes. And it's art. You can interpret it however you feel. Um, but it's kind of the mark of a great song, and that's kind of the mark that he left with this record. like you said, depending on when you listen to the song, how it hits you emotionally, it can bring up different emotions.
Yeah, for sure. Is this has got to be top 5 best things Paul's ever written in his career, isn't it? It's got to be.
I would say I believe it's one of his greatest contributions, not just as a Beatle, but as an artist.
Mm, yeah. Linda's actually on this backing vocals. So that's interesting. Billy Preston, as we said, on the Hammond organ. That Hammond organ, man, that thing saw some business back in the day, didn't it?
Yes.
Wow. Yeah. Billy Preston had had a career in his own right, kids. Just don't think the Beatles made him famous. This guy had a career long before he got to work with them, and they loved him. By all reports, that Billy was a great guy and they loved him, and everybody loved recording with him because he was a professional and he loved having fun in the studio. So yeah, talented guy, man. He started as a kid too, man. Like he was a young kid back in the day. Because I think there's a video floating around, Phil, of him and Nat King Cole. I'm pretty sure.
Wow.
Yeah, been around for a long time, so that's pretty cool. We wind up a side one with Maggie May, Phil's favorite tune. This is 40 seconds. There's not much to say here. It's just a joke. That's all it is.
Mm-hmm.
And not much. It's sort of back to their skiffle roots. And once you hear that word, Phil, you're kind of like, yeah, I get it. It's a skiffle song. That's really crappy. So that's skiffle, boy. What could have been? The Beatles could have been a great skiffle band. But Dirty Maggie May, they have taken her away. She never walked down Lime Street anymore. Or should I say anymore? The judge he guilty found her for robbing a homeward bounder. That dirty no good robbing Maggie May. This is a part of Liverpool they turned me to. £2.10 a week. That was my pay. It is a traditional Liverpool folk song. So don't be hating on nobody here, kids. It's actually a Liverpool folk song. There you go. Side 2 of this album, kids, is I've Got a Feeling. First track, 3 minutes, 37 seconds. I freaking personally love this song. What's your take on I've Got a Feeling?
I Got a Feeling is bar none my favorite song on the album. When you watch like the performance from Get Back, and it's just like those guys were having a blast. Like you could see, like, man, these guys kind of missed live performance, and it's like, man, we just missed out. We missed out on getting to see these guys perform a lot more songs later on, and getting to see them on the rooftop recording, performing. It's just like, man, one of the best songs on the album. Paul on vocals here is incredible. When you give him a chance to do like the screaming voice and everything, he always knocks it out the park. And this was the song that I said earlier, where you can see the dichotomy between him and John, where Paul is very much upbeat and he's in love. He's in a new relationship. And John is like in a very different place. He's in a very dark place. And you can see that in the difference between their verses.
Oh, yeah. Good point. You know, we've done a Little Richard episode here on the show, Phil, and Richard was quick to point out that without him, the Beatles don't have anything happening in Germany, which is 100% true.
Mm-hmm.
But that he also had worked with Paul about when he would cover one of Richard's songs. So about how high he could get with his vocal range. So I always loved that story. But you're right. Paul had that scream that was just freaking great. There's just something about it, you know?
Yeah. So once he gets to, I don't want to call it the bridge, but kind of like the end of his verse where he's going into the hook and he's doing the yell into Mike is great. And then, like I said, you get into Lennon's verse, and his is like very somber, very like lower register.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
And
I mean, even just starting this verse out with everybody's had a hard like, and he's looking around like when you hear Paul's verse, none of this comes across.
None of it, yeah. There's a reason why it doesn't fit, right? Because it's 3 different songs. This song is 3 different songs put together.
Yes.
Everybody had a hard year. Everybody had a good time. Everybody had a wet dream. Everybody saw the sunshine. So, oh, that's good. Everybody let their hair down. Everybody pulled their socks up. Everybody put their foot down. That's fun. That's fun.
Well, I love it. I love Paul's vocals on it. I I love John's verse, and then when they kind of mash both together to close the song, it works.
It does.
It feels like it shouldn't work, but it does.
It does. Dude, Phil, there are moments on this album, and I am not going to give Phil Spector credit. I won't do it. But there's moments on this album that just are so much fun. Like this song is
Yes.
one of them.
Yes. But yeah, this is just one of those that works. Like Paul singing on it, uh, Billy again on organ, the guitar on it. It's just great record.
Oh, dude, it's so good. Yeah. Big fan of this song. So Lennon's John's song was a litany where every line started with the word everybody. As we said, the song had been recorded twice before by John prior to the Let It Be sessions. First occurred in early December of 1968 at Lennon's Kit Estate on a portable cassette tape. For this, the lyric was "Everyone had a hard year" instead of the later "Everybody." Later in December 68, with the lyric changed it to "Everybody," Lennon was also he filmed performing the song in the back garden of Kenwood. This footage was used in the Yoko Ono art film Rape, film number 6.
Okay.
Yeah. Don't go rush out to find it and rent it. You see my dated rent it reference? Where'd that come from? Don't go out to your local Blockbuster and try to find that movie, kids. So yeah, there we have it. So the next song, track number 2 on side 2, is One After 909. 2 minutes, 54 seconds. There are 2 different versions of this song, Phil. Probably more than 2. But the first version of this song released was back during their suits, the days when they were in their suits, which was the version I knew before I'd ever heard this album in terms of, well, I can't say I knew it first because I'm a kid way after these guys have broke up and I'm listening to their songs, but I'm like, wait a minute, I know this song. There's another version of it. Which version do you prefer? The one from the Suits days or this one?
I'm just more used to this one, so I will say the one from Let It Be. But yeah, it's just one of those songs that it just sounds like one of their songs that they throw into a set and just kind of jam through it. This was the song I was saying earlier that you grow to appreciate it a lot more after you watch Get Back and watching them play it in the sessions. And it's just like, yeah, this is actually just a great record. You can see how much fun that George has playing it. I mean, sorry, not George, but John has playing it and singing it. But yeah, I think it's a great blues record. You can very much see the roots of it. It's a great record. It's again one of those where if you listen to this album and you can see creatively where these guys are, and then when you can see where these guys are having the most fun as a band, it's usually when they're going back to stuff from like their early days that would fit well on some of their earlier albums.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. We have to mention, Phil, the version you hear on this album is actually the live version on the rooftop for the concert.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Didn't realize
pretty cool. Yeah. And yeah, very cool. It was written no later than spring of 1960 and perhaps as early as 57. So apparently the timing of it is a little vague and we don't really know. But and plus at the end you can hear John singing Danny Boy as the song is done. Leave it to these guys. In a 1980 Playboy interview, John Lennon said, quote, "That was something I wrote when I was about 17. I lived at Newcastle. I was born on the 9th of October, the 9th month. It's just a number that follows me around, but numerologically, apparently I'm a number 6 or 3 or something, but it's all part of 9. Phil, I don't know how much you know about this. Dude, he was obsessed with the number 9.
Number 9.
Number 9? Yes.
Number 9.
Dude, he took it seriously, man. There was someone that worked that he and Yoko paid for his services. I don't know what this guy who was like a numbers expert in later years, and John was obsessed with this numbering stuff, man. Obsessed. You ever gone down that rabbit hole before? Of like what your number is?
Numerology?
Yes.
I believe my life path number is 5 because
Holy crap, you know it.
Yeah, I think it's 5 because I think you have to add your birth date all the way up to get it.
And yours is so you add the numbers in the year,
in the day, and the month.
So how do you come to 5? Because that number matches the number 5 on the scale or whatever it is.
Well, you have to get it down to singles number, so it's like It's like 1 and 9 is 10. 8 and 5 is 13
Oh, I get it. Okay.
plus the 10. And so, like I said, you get a 5 out of it. And then you add it with the rest of the numbers in your birth date. I believe it's
Wow.
5 without looking it up. Of course, they have life path number calculators online and stuff that you can
Of
read on
course.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. I've got a couple numbers bouncing around in my head from my own life, but it's never anything I've, went too far down. You know, part of it kind of scares me, Phil, if I'm being honest with you. I don't know how deep I want to get on that stuff because I'm afraid of finding something deeper than I expected. You know what I mean? But yeah, Billy Preston is on this again, and man, you can hear that piano, can't you?
Yes.
Ooh, really good. Like, honestly, take him off this record, dude. It's a totally different record.
Yeah, they very much needed him in the studio to calm
Yeah,
things down, and this
yeah.
album very much needed his sound on organ.
It was funny because I remember during the anthology, I think it was John. You could hear a clip of John in an interview later years saying that it's amazing how much everybody was on their best behavior the moment that Billy walked in. Because he came in with that big smile. They were all very cool and very nice and polite to him. And they stopped arguing the whole time he was there. And I'm like, all right, well, hey, whatever works, man. So yeah, that's awesome. There's different versions of this, as we said before, kids. On March 5th, 63, they did record a version of this song. That's the one that we talked about earlier that I really enjoyed the first version, if I'm being honest, but I love this one as well. Um, yeah. So the first version, it was released in 95, the Anthology 1 compilation. The song was shelved for 6 years until the Beatles re-recorded it for their Get Back project and eventually saw the release on Let It Be. It's also included on Let It Be Naked. So there you go. Yeah, it's a fun song. Paul said of this song, it's not a great song, but it's a great favorite of mine because it has great memories for me and John trying to write a bluesy freight train song. There were a lot of those songs at the time, like Midnight Special, Freight Train, Rock Island Line. So this one was one after 909. She didn't get the 909, she got the one after it. So there you have it from the man himself. Number 3 on side 2. The Long and Winding Road, 3 minutes, 38 seconds. I made a sound because even Phil, if you didn't know about the Phil Spector story, let's say you don't know, and you follow these guys' catalog, at some point, in my opinion, when you get to Long and Winding Road, something feels off. Okay. As a kid, Phil, this felt off to me. When I started discovering the band and diving in, I couldn't explain it, but I was like, this doesn't feel like them. It doesn't. And it's the freaking orchestra, Phil. I love the song. The orchestra for me ruined it. And I'm not saying I don't skip it necessarily, but I encourage you, everyone listening, listen to the original version on Let It Be Naked. And it's actually Paul's piano that you hear. It's a much different song. What's your opinion on Long and Winding Road?
Yeah, I mean, you hear some of the takes of it on Get Back where he's playing it and just singing and playing piano with it,
Mhm.
and it's a different song. It's more subdued. Lyrics on it are great. Paul, of course, is great on vocals on it. Um, and I mean, I won't bash the Phil Spector sound because when it works, it works.
Mm.
And the whole purpose of it is to give you like this big, wide, massive, cinematic sound, and that effect is definitely here. I just don't think it fits the album though.
Yeah.
There are several things he's produced throughout his career where it fits incredible. Turner on over River Deep, fantastic song.
Mm.
Wherever you want, Righteous Brothers, all the other stuff this guy's produced, like tons of stuff he's produced, his sound works with. But I just feel like over this record, and of course we hear infamously that Paul hated it. um,
He hated
uh,
it. Yes.
uh, and I think this is also kind of his place in the band where you could tell where the Beatles as a business was and how it made sense to bring in somebody like Phil Spector and work with him at that point. But you could tell where he was creatively. He did not want to have to work with somebody like Phil. And it might not have been even that he doesn't like Phil Spector. I just think that he had his vision for what he wanted things to sound like, and it was not this. And
Yeah.
so I it's tough because this is a song where I feel like it's been marred so much by the story around it and the kind of the history around it. Um, where I like it. I don't dislike the song. I like it a lot, but it's hard not to hear it and go, man, this is part of the demise of this band.
Yeah.
Definitely part of Paul's butting head with other people in the room.
Yeah. Oh man. There's some evidence peeking its head around this album. I mean, I don't know if it's as pronounced as it is on this, but man, it's there for sure. And look, kids, we didn't bother giving you the backstory here, but basically this album was not. It was just lying around. They had split the studio and were done. They were sick of the recording, sick of each other, sick of the recording conditions, and they were done. And to my recollection, they weren't fans of Twickenham. That's why they went to EMI and EMI Studios to record everything, and they just weren't happy.
Tom Clark 6M Podcast is sponsored in part by Radius Law Group. Every day, Radius helps individuals, families, small businesses, and nonprofit organizations throughout North Carolina, Florida, and Pennsylvania resolve their legal issues by providing effective legal counsel in the areas of estate planning, as well as elder law and Medicaid. Radius Law holds the radical belief that working with a lawyer can indeed be enjoyable. So give them a call at 1-800-519-5667 for more information and tell them that Tom Clark 6M Podcast sent you.
So basically, they had all these tracks. The album's not finished. And so together, John and George, not Paul, asked their manager at the time, Alan Klein, man, we could do a pod about that guy, to turn over the January 69 recordings to Phil Spector in hope of salvaging the album. Paul said from day one, basically, nope, I don't want anything to do with this or whatever. He didn't like the idea. And I don't think it was against Phil. It was just, this is not, I don't know how this is going to work. And then to your point, Phil, he hated this version of Long and Winding Road. He was demanding and like later on that the heart be removed, that he just didn't like the sound of things. And, it's way overproduced, dude. I mean, there's points in my ear, the voice doesn't match the production of the music behind it. Like it's just it's like a cut and paste. And I'm with you. I don't hate it. But
Yeah.
when I hear the other versions, I'm less of a fan of this. I mean, for sure. So, and look, when we say orchestra, Phil, 18 violins, 4 violas, 4 cellos, a harp, 3 trumpets, 3 trombones, 2 guitars, and 14 women singing.
Yeah.
So
Wall of sound, baby. That's his technique. And so like I said, man, when it works, it works. But and I don't even think the production here is bad. I just
no,
think
it's
it
not bad.
clashes. I think it just clashes.
Yeah.
And yeah. It I don't think it's overwhelming either, because I think the thing with the wall of sound is that it's supposed to emphasize the artist's voice with it.
Mm.
And at parts it does, but at parts it just kind of sounds like Paul just sitting on top of like all of these other like very busy notes and sounds.
Yeah. This yeah, good call. This is actually the 20th and final number 1 single in the US for the Beatles. Man, don't know if I knew that. But yeah, Paul not happy with it. John is playing bass on the original recording of this song and not Paul,
Mm-hmm.
because it was only meant to be a quick run through with Paul on piano, with Paul going back to record or overdub the bass after the fact, which they just never got to. Throughout the track, Lennon makes some amateurish mistakes. There's a weird sounding slide at the fretboard at the minute 3-second mark, leading some critics to accuse him of deliberately sabotaging Paul's song, since relations between the two were pretty abysmal at this point. I don't know if I've ever heard that. Could you imagine John trying to do that in the studio to Paul?
I don't think so. I just think that the stuff that he didn't take as seriously and he wasn't that enthused about playing, it very much showed.
Mm,
I mean, it talked about that with I Be Mine. He just wasn't even there. Didn't even care to be there to record it. And so I don't think I believe that he sabotaged them. I just believe that he didn't put as much effort into it as he would have other things that he enjoyed playing.
that's fair.
And maybe that's just me trying to be charitable of the guy. You never know. He could have been petty enough to do that, but I don't know.
Yeah. It seems like, I don't know, that he'd be more professional than that one because he knows his name's going to be on that too.
Yeah,
But I don't know. Maybe so. Hard to say, man. They were not in a good place during during Let It Be sessions for sure. At any given time, they were falling apart. So, track number 4 on side 2. We're almost there, kids. This is For You Blue. This is a George tune. 2 minutes, 32 seconds. You take the lead on this one. What's your take on For You Blue?
very George record. Again, it's just like I Me Mine. It's a very you can very much hear the influences from this in the songs that are on his first solo album. He's
Mm.
got more than one song on it that sounds similar to this. This is his style of record. It's his style of subject matter. Um, I really like this record a lot. It's a blues, very blues inspired record. In the title, don't think that that is a coincidence. Um, but also, like I said, it's just kind of his subject matter. Like he writes these kind of love songs. He did that for a big part of the discography with the Beatles, and he did that when he left and did his solo stuff as well.
This is actually the B side to Long and Winding Road. And this song was written for the infamous Patty Boyd. Because as we've established here on the show before, Phil, that Patty Boyd must have been an amazing lady.
Hmm?
Because, George and Eric Clapton and whoever else, no disrespect, love this woman to death. So, yeah, must have been
Yeah.
amazing. It's 12 bar blues. In fact, George even says it during the song.
Yes.
Uh, it's
Um,
good. I love this tune, man.
yeah, it's one of those records where it just kind of makes you happy. Like it's just the way he sings it, just kind of like the sweet lyrics he has on it. I really like this song a lot.
Elmore James got nothing on this, baby. Love that bit. Love that bit. Yeah, very bluesy song. I really love this. Like, this is, again, there's gems on this album, Phil. Like, forgetting the fact that they were in the shape they were in when they recorded it. This is a fun tune, man. I never skip this song. I love this song. I sing along to it every time I hear it. So, good stuff. And so, when writing For You Blue, George was partly influenced by his stay with Bob Dylan and the band in Woodstock over November, December 68. Whereas that visit had been a musically rewarding experience for George, the Beatles first worked on the song amid an atmosphere of discord. That's major understatement here.
Hmm.
And they when they recorded this song, it includes a lap steel guitar part played by John. So John's doing the lap steel guitar here. And among music critics, some have admired the track for its lighthearted qualities and as a good band performance. Other folks identify it as an inconsequential song, particularly in relation to some of the Harrison compositions that his bandmates rejected over the Let It Be period. I don't see this as inconsequential at all. I enjoyed this song, man. If nothing else, Phil, it shows his how much fun he can have in the studio, even despite all the nonsense. And plus, he's just being creative and just being himself, isn't he?
Yes. I don't think it's inconsequential, but um, when you think about some of the other records that he had demoed around that same time and possibly played for them, and that they picked this record and not some of the songs that made his solo album, it's very interesting. But
Yeah.
again, I think that that's just where George was at this point. He was ready. He was ready to do his own stuff. He was peaking creatively, and they just kind of saw him as a guy that would come in and maybe write two songs, an album. He wasn't a guy that was going to come in and be a driving force on the album.
And what's cool is that Paul did this song at the concert for George in November of 2002, a year after George passed. Very cool. As much as we dive into the problems these guys had, Phil, at the end of the day, they were family. I mean, even the years that when they all just stayed in court and they spoke to each other through attorneys and then never spoke to each other at all. I mean,
Yeah.
it just no one really knows Phil except the four of them. I mean, they pulled people into their chaos at any given time, or people were pulled into it. But at the end of the day, man, the reason you hate somebody so much is because maybe you love that person at one time, or you still do, and so that it's coming from somewhere, right? Unless it's a job situation where you have a rivalry with somebody, but maybe there's some of that going on here too between John and Paul. I would say. I mean, of course, the competition hot and heavy at any given time, but man. I just don't want to. I don't want to leave folks with this idea they all hate each other till the end because I don't. I just don't know if I believe that's the case, man.
No, George was notoriously very close with George. I mean, not
Yeah,
George, but John.
John. Yeah.
Very, very close with John. And I think that that's why he probably felt a way. You come in and this is somebody that you're close with, that you look up to as a musician as well. You're trying to play songs for him, and he's just like not taking it seriously. Like, yeah, it's annoying. um,
Mm,
and I mean, even after the fact, I've mentioned "How Do You Sleep." Mentioned the diss track before.
mm.
There's the video of the recording of it, and George is very awkwardly in the room playing, and you can see on his face that it's a very awkward situation because he is still friends with Paul as well, and he, he is playing along to this record where John is very much savagely going in on their mutual friend.
Yeah. We mentioned that concert for George where Paul did this song. Danny also joined in that song when they did it live.
Hmm.
That's very cool. Very cool. Danny Harrison, of course, kids, in case you didn't know. So,
No.
yeah, I'm perfectly fine with this song. Um, the last track on this album is the title track of the movie that we've all been talking about for a couple of years now, I guess it's been. And it's Get Back, which was the basically, let it be salvaged, saved, revived, redeemed. And the way that we wanted and didn't know how much we wanted till we saw it. There will be a Get Back episode, kids. Just never you fear. We're getting there. Phil, when that doc came out and we saw the creative process of Get Back happening in the studio, and when I say in real time, you know what I mean, but like everything's captured as it happened. Like there's people all over the world going, "Oh my god, look at this. Look, oh my." And I'm sitting back with my ego saying, "I'm not surprised by this. This is the Beatles, man." Like but then Phil, the more I watched, I'm like, "My god, this is amazing." Like you just get sucked into it, don't you? Like the way they created this song, man. What do you think about Get Back?
Yeah, I love Get Back. Great record. It's impossible not to think about the Get Back sessions, not just a name only, but just them playing the song on the rooftop, them playing it in the sessions. It's synonymous with it. Of course, it's synonymous with like their last run as a band.
Mm,
Just a great record. Just the bass on it. Of course, again, the amazing Billy Preston on organ. This song would not be what it is without Billy Preston.
mm.
It's a great record.
Yeah, so good, so good. The album version of this song contains a different mix than features a studio chat between Paul and John at the beginning, which lasts for 20 seconds before the song begins. And it also omits the coda featured in the single version and with a final dialogue taken from the Beatles' rooftop concert. Man, you'll get your kids don't go too far down the rabbit hole of versions with Beatles songs. You will drown. I promise you. There's no coming up for air. Once you go, you're gone. You're out to sea, man. But yeah, this song, like a lot of others, they did a lot of different versions. Reached number one in the United Kingdom, United States, Ireland, Canada, New Zealand, Netherlands, Australia, France, West Germany, Mexico, Norway, Switzerland, Austria, and Belgium. Take a breath.
Hmm.
The Beatles' only single that credited another artist at their request. At their request, he was credited here as well. He meaning Billy Preston. How cool is that?
Yeah. Uh, Fifth Beatle in a lot of people's minds for a reason.
Mm,
Um, yeah, just great record. Paul's lyrics on here, Paul's singing on it, great. For me, at the start of this, I was saying that it has some of the most memorable records Get Back is one of their most memorable records for me.
Mm.
But the first few lines of this record, who doesn't know this record?
For sure. Yeah. And we'd tell you about the origin of it, kids, but just go watch Get Back because you'll see it. They just start jamming on January 7th, 69 during rehearsal sessions at Twickenham. That's where it started, was just a jam. And after working out the rhythm and harmony of the primary riff on his Hofner bass, which, by the way, Phil was recently returned. Did you see that?
I did not.
The Hofner bass, which has been missing since 1970, someone had stole it. The guy's family that he had sold it 2 years ago, returned it. So just send it directly to Paul. I don't know the story really, if the family knew what they had, if they thought it was a knockoff, if they knew they had the original, but they did the right thing. 52 years later, whatever long it's been. Good Lord, that's crazy.
Yeah. Isn't the story behind the lyrics that was supposed to be like political, very political record, and then it
Yes.
ended up changing?
Yeah, they changed it as they went, which is interesting because, you know, Phil wasn't unlike these guys to take their little shots in later years. I mean, Taxman was one of them. There was other things they did. What was it? I and the Walrus with the Pilcher reference, which they denied that was what it was. I'm like, come on, you know. But yeah, dude, there were moments where they did things like that. But can you imagine this band being a political band, by the way, and being that kind of band toward the end? What if they went down that road too hardcore, you think?
They had their moments where they did those kind of things, but it's hard to see them going that far with it because of their roots and, you know, just their fan base. I don't think their fan base would have always been as accepting of it. You know, when you get into politics with a lot of people, you can get pretty divisive. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of this, let's see, Paul introduced some of the lyrics, reworking Get Back to the Place You Should Be from fellow Beatle George Harrison's Sour Milk Sea into Get Back to Where You Once Belonged. McCartney played bass on Jackie Lomax's recording of Sour Milk Sea a few months earlier. On January 9th, Paul brought a more developed version of Get Back to the group with the Sweet Loretta verse close to its finished version. For the press release to promote the Get Back single, Paul wrote, "We were sitting in the studio. We made it up out of thin air. We started to write words there, and then we finished it. We recorded it at Apple and made it to a song to Roller Coast by."
Yeah.
So, fun stuff. The beginning of the Let It Be version of the song, Lennon can be heard jokingly saying, Sweet Loretta fart. She thought she was a cleaner, but she was a frying pan." Which is fun. The album version of the song also ends with Lennon famously quipping, "I'd like to say thank you on behalf of the group and ourselves, and I hope we pass the audition." That's good.
Yeah. I believe, isn't this the song that's playing, or is it "I Dig a Pony" that's playing when the police are coming up the stairs? No, that's what it is. When the police first knock at the door and they're coming up the stairs to come up to the rooftop, "I Dig a Pony" is rounding up and they're starting Get Back, right?
I think so, yeah.
Because I believe during it, isn't that where Paul does like he does a different version of the lyrics where he's like, "Get home, Loretta. They're gonna arrest you. They're gonna call the police on you."
Because there's that moment where Paul, they all know, the guys are starting to know that something's going on, and Paul looks over his shoulder and he turns back and just lets out a woo like Ric Flair. It's very fun.
Yeah, he was the most excited out of all of them about potentially getting arrested, and just the rebellion of it. He just was having a blast with this idea of. It's hilarious, man. Get back home, Loretta.
Yeah, he's great. You're right. He was so pumped up. He was like, "Oh my God, drag us off the roof in cuffs. This will be great," you know. And since it's the British cops are going, "Now, lads, we can't have this. You know, there's traffic. There's people going to work today and can't be up here doing this." And yeah, it's bumbling British cops, man. It's like the Keystone Cops up there, dude. That part of the movie Get Back is funny, right? When they're in the lobby of the studios there and they're talking, it's like, "Well, you know, we can't have this. There's people complaining out there." And I'm like, "What are you guys doing, man?" Like, good Lord. Oh man. It's like you don't know what you have, Phil. Like, I get it. They're from there. I guess it'd be like if everyone got upset, like AC/DC's doing something. Well, no, you know what? They're not even our band. Like an American band. I don't even know what I'm thinking of at this point. I'm drawing a blank, but like an American band that's like Foo Fighter, I don't know, Nirvana, whoever. Like we're all getting upset. Like, what are we doing? Why are we upset? These guys are legends, or they're they're on their way to being legends. What are we all getting mad about? I don't know, dude. It's crazy. But that's that's our stiff friends across the pond. Not all of them kids. Shout out to Joe Higgins and Jay Love from Two Nations Under Ted, a Ted Lasso podcast. Yeah, they're not all like that for sure, no doubt. So I don't know if we could talk this song to death too, like Let It Be and like Let It Be. I don't know if we really need to. Get Back it's a classic, man. I don't know what more I could add to the conversation, but I love this song, dude. I don't think I've ever skipped this song a day in my life. It's great. I mean, what a way to end this album, dude. I mean, if Phil Spector did nothing else, at least the pacing of the album is not bad. You know what I mean?
Yes, I agree.
So, yeah, I'm with you. What you said earlier, I think it's one of the most recognized songs, one of the most well-known songs for sure. And like we said, it's not the same track without Billy Preston for sure. So as we wrap up here today, kids, that is Let It Be. I know you said it was pretty high for you. I mean, I got to be honest with you, man. I think Get Back has done some good things for this album, and I don't know that anyone hated this album to begin with or looked down on it. But you have to think, Phil, that once Get Back came out, this album must have seen a resurgence in terms of downloads. I mean, that's how this stuff typically works. Did you ever hear anything like that when Get Back came out?
I don't. Well, see, you gotta understand when I discovered Get Back, it was just kind of like I trying to discover it and watched it on YouTube. I didn't like talk to a whole bunch of people that were Beatles fans when I discovered it.
That's fair. So you had your own viewpoints of it.
Yeah. So yeah, it was all in the vacuum of me discovering Beatles music and finding all this stuff, which is funny because it it kind of links to a conversation we started having before we started recording.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah. I've done that too. I've discovered songs and or a movie or a show in a vacuum and binged it or listened to it and felt a certain kind of way, and then later discovered the reviews were horrible or that things were that people hate. I'm like, what? Why would people hate this? This is great. So, oh, something happened to that like that recently to me, and now I can't remember what it was. But yeah, this song went through a lot of different iterations. As we said, we saw this thing happening in real time, and but in terms of the political stuff, because it was supposed to be a political satire tune, as Phil alluded to earlier, Paul explained these lyrics by saying, quote, there were a couple of verses to Get Back which were actually not racist at all. They were anti-racist. There were a lot of stories in the newspapers then about Pakistanis crowding out flats, living 16 to a room or whatever. So one of the verses, which we were making up on the set of Let It Be, one of the outtakes has something about too many Pakistanis living in a council flat, which to me was actually talking out against overcrowding for Pakistanis. If there was any group that was not racist, it was the Beatles. I mean, Phil, we can all agree on that. The Beatles, which they don't get enough credit for, were probably one of the first white acts in this country to say we're not playing the South because of, reasons, because we're not going to play to segregated audiences. So, I don't know how we don't hear enough of those stories, and it's a shame, Phil, that none of those stories really impacted and made a major difference, I guess, on the course of history. But I don't know, one small step at a time, I suppose.
Yeah, they were very heavily influenced by Black artists as well. So it'd be hard for me to consider that these guys love these musicians and went on to make music based off of what their contributions were, and then they were also secretly racist. It'd be very weird. It just would not match at all.
And I totally agree. And what a way to wind it up. Let me just throw this at you. John actually believed that Get Back was aimed at Yoko. and Paul
Really?
denied it for years.
Oh, you can see it. You can see certain parts of yeah, you can see certain parts of the because of course I've mentioned the infamous diss track from John several times now, but um, Yoko when she talks about it, she's just like, yeah, he wrote that song after we had to go through several songs that were like subliminally uh, aimed at us or aimed at me, and so I can see it. I mean, him. There's certain parts in Get Back as well. Watching Get Back that I can see where John may have felt that way, and I mean even just the
Mm.
chorus of it, the call and refrain of Get Back to where you once belong. I can see it.
Well,
Now I don't know if that was his intent, but I can see where he would have got that from.
I mean, I'm with Paul. If that's what the intent was, I'm good with that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's stuff in Get Back like George leaving and then Yoko coming and sitting in his seat that were just like,
yeah. Yikes. Um, yeah, man, a lot more stuff to get through in terms of what happened to these guys and how things went sour, and how they stayed sour for a long time, and we never got that reunion that we mentioned earlier. That fictional reunion never happened. There's multiple books out there written. There's one I've recommended here on the show before about Paul's later years, and the book has taken like 99% from his own diaries, which the family allowed this writer to go in and to put this book together. And it's a pretty stark revelation on where John's head was in his last years living in the Dakota and how his relationship was to Paul. And it was to say it was strained and it was up and down is, whew, man, it was rough. It's a rough read. It's very revealing, but it's a rough read. I think it's called Nowhere Man, pretty sure.
yeah.
But it's worth checking out for sure.
I mean, you could see signs of that in Get Back. You can see this is something that's in the Peter Jackson version that I don't remember if it's in the original one I saw, but um, John coming in with the newspaper that announced that he was officially divorced and he was going to move ahead with his relationship with Yoko.
Mhm.
It's interesting to see his reactions to it and to see how happy he was in that moment about it. And then when you think about like everything linked to his first wife, uh, it's kind of dreadful to watch. Like, like I don't know, man. Doesn't give you the best feelings watching it.
No, and there's two sides to every story. We don't know John's side over Cynthia. We only know Cynthia's side as John being a cheater and a scoundrel and a sham or, just a bad person or whatever. And look, to be fair, that's probably true. Um, but man, you're right, dude. It's not a good look. And the fact that, he and Julian they were fine after a while and but the thing with him and Cynthia, you're right, man. Like it was a mess. It was a mess. John was the first Beatle to get married too. So yeah, not a good light. I'm sure she don't know about struggled, but she went through it for a long time, man. Long time.
Yeah.
So look, kids, we gush over this band and over their music, but we have to remind everyone no one's perfect, including these four guys. They made their share of mistakes. We appreciate their contributions as an individual artist and as a band. But let's be honest again, no one's perfect. They've got their share of skeletons. But this album is definitely not one of them. There you have it, kids. There is Let It Be, the album, not the movie, and not Get Back. Again, it's coming soon. But Phil, let's take this home. What is your last word on Let It Be?
Definitely one of my favorite Beatles albums. Gave us some of their most memorable records on the way to the end of this band. I mean, as a big George fan as well, it gave me a lot of precursors to stuff that he would do on his own. So I have a lot of appreciation for this album.
Mm. Yeah, same. Big fan. Love this album. I don't know if it's my favorite album. I think we've been there before about what's your favorite Beatles album, things of that nature. But I love this album. I mean, to me, it's just not, it's not the somber, taking your final bow kind of release that I'm sure that's how it hit people at the time. And it was a bad note for a lot of folks and a lot of fans. But again, all props to Peter Jackson, the mighty Peter Jackson, kids. I'm telling you, amazing what that guy did for the look, if nothing else, the legacy of this band. I mean, you got the good, the bad, and the ugly. In the original Let It Be, you got a lot of the bad and the ugly. It almost felt like that's what we want to show people. And I'm like, why are we doing this? And the footage that Jackson included and cleaned up and restored is amazing. And you're getting a lot more than just the bad and the ugly. You're getting, the end of a relationship, but it's not as dire and bleak as the Let It Be film made it out to be. But there you have it, kids. There's the album. Enjoy it. Go listen to it. Then listen to this again. Come back and tell us what you think. And in the meantime, that is Let It Be.
Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Check out our social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 6M Podcast. We'll see you next time.